It doesn't always work like this, but we try to encourage this. Like, you leave it in the room, don't go and have the stairwell conversations afterwards. We are all aligned in terms of growing the company and trying to get to the next peak. And I think that the one thing that we've definitely learned along the way, there's not one way to do it. There's not always just one single right way. So not everyone's right all the time. Let's have the debate and then again find a decision.
Welcome to the How They Lead podcast, hosted by Benjamin Wade and Ben Stocker. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the world of high performance, showcasing examples of how individuals and teams can reach their full potential.
Together, they'll be inviting amazing guests who have defined or represented high performance in their own right, from world record breakers to individuals who have achieved first in their fields. The How They Lead podcast will showcase a diverse range of guests, each with their unique stories and insights to share. So join us as we challenge traditional ways of doing things, explore new ideas, methods and possibilities, and evolve the way people perform.
Logan, thank you for joining us on our podcast, How They Lead. It's going to be a really great episode. I'm really looking forward to this one. As you are probably aware, we're trying to create a library of really unique individual people at the forefront of leadership, whether they're part of an amazing leadership team, a high-performing team, they're leading them, they're creating them, developing them. We want to hear from those unique individuals and give our listeners a chance to tap into that knowledge and take away some lessons so they can too deploy that knowledge and create their own high-performing teams. And today we want to hear from yourself. I think Ben's going to run a little intro and we'll hear all about your background and how you've achieved success in your own field.
Yeah, Logan, welcome. It's a pleasure to have my old boss on the podcast.
It's great to be here, Ben. This is my chance to grill you, isn't it?
Well, completely. I think this is going to be one of those awkward ones for me, where actually Logan knows like how I've operated previously. So we've already asked you to treat me nicely.
And gritty stories.
Okay. Well, Logan, look, as Ben said, this is all about like people leading at the rock face of leadership, and I've had the pleasure of seeing you in action for a number of years, and being a big admirer of what you've done with Dartmouth with Kernel. So, could you share with everyone who's listening and watching your journey so far?
Sure. So, look, in I guess starting point, we are a global recruitment company, just under 300 heads, multi-brand, multi-niche, which I can talk about later. The business is now 11 years old. We've gone through 2 rounds of private equity and have just started the journey on the next 5-year cycle. Story, in short, I don't know how much you want to give me as a preamble, but started life actually, funny enough, in this building 22 years ago when it was JP Morgan's building. Did 3 years of corporate finance, was not very good at it. Fell into recruitment in 2004 and started my first recruitment business in 2005. That resembled a lot of the industry in terms of being essentially a lifestyle business. We got it to about 30 people. There was 3 of us that were partners running the business. And then I got diagnosed with cancer the day before my first wedding anniversary, which was 2010. We were expecting our first eldest child 4 months later. So had some time out whilst I was having treatment to think about direction in life and what I wanted to do and why. And then started Dartmouth July 2012 with a very explicit aim of trying to scale this business, which so far we've done relatively successfully.
Yeah, great. You've dropped some quite big kind of things there. You talked about obviously cancer and going through that and having starting a young family at the time, and then also choosing to start a new business. So yeah, can already see you're quite happy having quite a few plates spinning at the same time, which leads me on to like my first question, which is about like how you lead. Like the title of the podcast is How They Lead. So it would be remiss of us to not kind of get from you in one sentence. What's your ethos around how you lead people and teams?
So I think The Rock, so Dwayne Johnson, has his tagline, the hardest worker in the room, or hardest workers in the room. And my kids joke, they call me the pebble or the stone, depending on where my body is at the time. And the only thing we've really got in common is the size of our noses, but and maybe the color of our skin. But I think being the hardest worker in the room is probably how I lead, if I'm honest. I don't think I'm the smartest. I'm smart enough. I'm definitely not the most charismatic, but I generally no one's going to outwork me.
And did that mantra change when, I guess, the two main points that you mentioned there were obviously the cancer and also leaving the investment banking and then going to recruitment? Did they change either side of those sort of life-changing changes or life-changing events?
I've got a work ethic kind of ingrained in me, probably from my parents. Both my parents are first generation over here. My mum came from a really kind of poor family from Malaysia to study nursing, and my father is South African Indian. He died 10 years ago, but basically ran away from home and ended up here as an illegal immigrant, and then kind of worked his way up and actually became reasonably successful. But that kind of migrant work ethic was hardwired in that no one's going to give you a hand up or a hand out. You've got to go and make something on your own. And actually, I will say openly, I think the fact that this country allowed my parents in, we were huge beneficiaries of the state and some of the support. Wasn't just their own hard work. There's an ecosystem that kind of exists to help you kind of climb upwards. But I think that over time, I've always had a decent work ethic. I think the thing that you learn as you get older and maybe mature is how to get more leverage out of yourself and out of others. So, one of the kind of conversations Ben and I've had many, many times is work hard or work smart. And I'm very much in the work hard camp and work smart. Ben was much more in the work smart camp, and I think it's now adopted the work hard one as well, or work harder. And I think that, look, the most successful people in the world work hard, right? That is almost an undisputable fact. If you want to pick, people right at the top of their game, Elon Musk does not sleep a lot, right? All that kind of 5 a.m. club, Mark Wahlberg, all that, those kind of people, they wake up early and they get stuff done early. Ben, I think, now wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get the day started. You are basically juggling an awful lot of balls and trying to get as much productivity out of yourself and out of your day. And I appreciate that's a really unfashionable narrative in a world where a lot of the culture will say, you need balance, or you need to give more time to yourself. And I'll be honest, I don't think I live like a robot, right? I've got 3 kids. I've got, I think, a relatively good social life. I play tennis once or twice a week. I make time to go to the gym every day. And, I try to kind of be really efficient with my time and plan. But my inputs and my cadence are pretty high, and that therefore dictates quite a lot of the outputs. And so, in short, I think, we have a phrase, right, which I think Ben's very aware of. We say champions do extra. And The Rock has his phrase, the hardest workers in the room. Pick one of them. I think it works.
Okay. I think you raised a really interesting point there. That you said you work really hard. So you work hard as opposed to smart, or working hard and smart. But then you reeled off the fact that you can play tennis twice a week and you do look after yourself. So actually, are you working really effectively and efficiently as opposed to just working hard 10, 11, 12, 13 hours a day? Because most people out there would work hard and not have time to go and play tennis. So how do you plan your week? I think that'd be a really interesting point to delve into for most of us out there. How do you plan your week and be that effective that you can be smart, hardworking, and still have time for yourself?
Yeah, look, I would hope that people would say that I've got time for nearly everyone, right? I'll give time, I'd hope, fairly generously, but I won't, you won't get unlimited time, right? So I think I am quite, if you've got 40 minutes, let's try and arrive at a decision or an outcome and move on. Right. And sometimes things take a bit longer and they'll drag, but I like to kind of shift stuff off my desk reasonably quickly. Sometimes a bit more thought's given. Even in the gym, anyone that, runs their own business will know that they're thinking about the business. All right. And so for me, going to the gym for an hour and 20 a day. I get my workout in. I will respond to emails, but what I'm doing is I'm thinking about the business. Right, what do I need to do? Where's the business at? What's the rhythm? Where are we at culturally? Where are we at performance wise? You're thinking all the time, right? You're living and breathing this stuff all the time. And I think a lot of owners, entrepreneurs, leaders will say you get burnt out by it. I don't. I've never found it a grind, right? You kind of you chose this, and I think everyone has to work, right? I think don't have to, but I want to work, and therefore, whilst I'm working, I want to be the best I can possibly be, and I want to create the best business I can possibly can, and the best team. And so that's my balance, as it were. And there's a discipline to it. My wife will say that discipline doesn't extend to devices in the household. Things like your phone in bed, that kind of stuff. But I generally, I'm unfortunate and I recover quite quickly, right? Up until the last couple of years, I'll tell you, last year was the first ever 2-week holiday I've ever had, ever. Even when I got married, I only had 10 days off. So I took my first 2 weeks off, and that was very deliberate. My oldest son was starting senior school, and the kind of catchphrase for that was "Let's go make some memories," right? So, but even then, we were in California. I'd wake up at 6 to go to the gym, do 2 hours, be online. The time difference works super well for the UK, and then go have breakfast with my family and have a break. But I think there's the discipline. Another word would be purpose. Just trying to make the most of the time that you're engaged. And I think a lot of people in our industry, but just generally, can basically be really busy but shuffling paper from side to side. Just not getting stuff done, not tackling the big things, agonizing over stuff without actually being effective. You're not going to get every decision right, but quite often a decision and moving on, and then if it's wrong, pivot. Broadly, your instinct's probably going to get you 80% of the way most of the time.
Yeah. So I think, without putting words into your mouth, and correct me if I am, it sounds like, when I ask you that question about like how do you lead, it comes from a place of you work hard, and we can, yes, okay, at lunch a couple of weeks ago, I did agree that I may have been slightly wrong with the work smart over the work hard. Like, hands up now, I agree, and I think it is unfashionable, but I think it's necessary. Like, certainly, I think we've seen in starting and growing West Peak, like you've as a leader, you've got to do all the hard work that people don't see. And so, coming back to how you lead, like individually, does it come from a place of role model first and then hold the expectation level, or is it something else?
Look, I've never really thought of it as role modeling. You guys will know this. You're the backstop, right? Ultimately, something breaks, you're the backstop. And nowadays, if something breaks, we've got a lot more people who can help out and will help out and will do stuff. But ultimately, your job as the MD or CEO or whatever it is, you're the backstop. When it's going well, you get some of the reflected glory, and when it's going badly, it's on you, right? And so, like I said this openly, we talked about, I don't know, 40 odd days ago, we closed our P transaction, and we kind of talked about to the team, what got us here was hard work, right, and outworking most other firms in our industry, and trying to give a service that wow. So again, we'll know this, but we talk about building fans, not customers. You over service and out service in an industry that is known for being complacent and lazy, which actually sometimes is really unfair. But that's the general view on the industry. And so you do that by basically meeting, seeing, spending more time with people than your competitors would. If I was to do this all over again, could I do it more quickly? Maybe, but the answer would be it is just hard work, right? And it's relentless hard work that's got us here. There's been there'll be a confluence of events, being fortunate with timing, meeting the right people along the way. But Gary players, can't do the South African accent, but Gary plays the the harder I work, the luckier I get. I think it's so true.
You mentioned a couple of times there that the hard work, but also culture. So it'd be really interesting to see how you manage both of them, instilling that sense of culture, and whether you going to the gym and getting your workouts in and having time for yourself, is that reflected within the business? Do people feel that they can take time out because actually they're going to be more effective at the end of the day if they do have time for themselves, or do they need to be at their desks all throughout the day and they can't be seen to take those breaks? How do you manage the cultural element of the business, but also ensuring people are hardworking?
That's a great question. I'd say there's a pre and post pandemic viewpoint here, and I sound like a dinosaur, but it is what I think. So look, I think pre-pandemic, I think we were 5 days in the office. You could visibly see people. It's a smaller business as well. We were about, I think, going into the pandemic, I don't know, 100 odd people at Dartmouth, maybe 70, 80, and Pure was about 70, 80, which we just acquired just before lockdown. And so that role modeling, people be able to see the pace, learning through osmosis, which I think is actually really important. That's we talk about culture, right? And we have these in our own households. It's not what you say to your kids, right? It's what they see you doing when you don't know they're watching you. That's the culture they pick up from their parents. That existed, and people would see me go to the gym, and I'm a big fan of people going to the gym, right? I think it's good to go and get a break during the day. I'm not a big fan of go to the gym, have lunch, go and have coffee, then come. You pick one, right? Post pandemic, for the last couple of years, you've lost a lot of that, and people talk about cultural atrophying and putting into that cultural banking. I actually think that I read this in Fast Company. I think the thing that we miss the most is pace. Actually, it's not culture. You miss the visible pace, and I've been thinking about this and how to articulate this well, and I haven't landed there. So this could be sort of slightly hollow, but I think that what I've benefited from along the way is good role models. And I've actually sought good role models along the way. I've paid for them in terms of non-exec and advisors, and paid a small fortune for them. But I would say that we wouldn't be here without some advice and hand-holding I had along the way, and that was an investment into me and the business. And I've sought them out as well, in all walks of life, right? It's not just we're talking about performance in the workplace, but I'm a Christian. Spiritually, I've sought out elders who can who've walked the walk for longer than me. People who are good parents. We've genuinely invited people over for dinner, and we typically from church, but seem to have raised your kids really well. How have you done that? How are they walking their faith in this culture? How do you tackle I guess some of the things that are happening in the world or being taught in schools that would be counter to what we believe? All these things, role modeling is super important. And I think whilst a lot of my senior folk are very capable of working from their homes, and they are, and what we're missing is actually people being able to see how good they are 5 days a week, and it's role modeling, right? And for me, again, if I was going to do it all over again, that I wouldn't do any differently. Being honest, I think that if someone offered me the chance to be in the office 5 days a week, but 20% of your week, if you're at 4 days a week, but I'd get 20 to 40% more out of my career. So in 5 years, I'd get somewhere if I was 4 days a week. But if I was 5 days a week, I'd get there in 6 or 7. I'd get there in 3 or 4 years. Sorry, saying quicker. I'd choose the quicker route, right? You've got limited time. I'd pick trying to be successful. And I think you ask about culture. That's the culture I'd like in the business, right? People who are extremely driven, who understand that time is precious, and you get one shot at your career, life. That's been my attitude to all of it, right? It's kind of, I'm not, definitely, as I said, I'm not most charismatic. I'm not the best looking, but my view is in terms of dating, ask, right? What's the worst could happen? Is to say no, and that worked out pretty well as well, right? So
Cool. Okay, so the bit that is still eating my head is like, it's just annoying that your kids are always watching you when you're at your worst. But at the same time, I guess like your team, your employees, they're always watching you when you're at your best, hopefully, and at your worst. I think the bit you said there about culture and post COVID, and different ways of working, etc. So pace is important. I think people being in the same space and having positive collisions, I agree with you, and being able to see high performers in action and learning from people is really, really important. So with that in mind, like, where are you at the moment in terms of, as a business, in terms of like creating that? How has that been communicated to the business? How have you done that? Or is that a work in progress?
I think it's a work in progress. I think look, I communicate this all the time, right? In terms of what good looks like in our business, and it gets harder, right? There are fewer as we get bigger. There are fewer people who know me personally. We've got great MDs across the group. Earlier on in the journey, in some ways, and in some ways finding their feet. In some ways, they're way better managers than I am or ever will be. But I think part of it is trying to find a narrative that people can grab hold of. That's obviously really important. And I was actually talking to my PT yesterday, and he's really into business books, and he's reading a book on leadership at the moment. And he made the point, right? People will die for a cause for free, right? If they really believe in it, right? It's not about money. People have been martyred for their faith. People have gone to war for their country. To give people a cause, they'll go out to fight for you. We try and refresh and reframe that all the time. But generally the cause is, I think actually what we do, even though it's a much maligned industry, is super important. There are 3 big decisions that most people will make in life, either consciously or non-consciously. Which God will you worship or follow, whether that's a person or a thing? So it could be money, could be family, could be love, could be anything, right? But everyone worships something. 2, most people will at some point ask the question, who do I spend the rest of my life with? And that's generally a fact. I think you can argue that happens for most people. And 3, what am I going to do with my life? And I don't know how old your kids are, I don't know how Ben Stockton's kids are, but it's a conversation that starts to happen, right? What are you going to do at a reasonably young age, actually? And that 3rd bit, given that we spend so much time in the Western world, particularly in big cities, talking about what we do, or with a podcast on it, can define or help define and shape your own viewpoint on yourself and others' view on you, right? So that bit, we're privileged to help people on that journey. So I think actually it's actually a more important job than a lot of people think. And then doing that pace, doing it in the right way. How do we convey that to a workforce who, and then what's the right way to do it? I think the thing that I get more and more anxious about as we get bigger is that sense of complacency. We've made it, and I really like the Amazon approach of every day is day one, right? It's day one, because day 2 is you're heading towards oblivion.
I really like a lot of what you mentioned. Really resonates with me, especially just under 12 years in the military before sort of management consultancy, and the military based on mission, vision, and values. So bringing everyone together and having those values aligned. And it sounds like your values and beliefs are a key focal point for you and what you've achieved. And it's something that we do on our leadership program. One of the first things that we look into is personal values and motivating values, and then that's the business. And it's quite often eye-opening that people haven't understood what motivates them in terms of their vision and values personally, and then that of the team. So do you think that vision and values play an important part in where you've got to in not only your career, but the business as well? Are people aligned in terms of their value?
I think vision, yes. I think in the early days we talked about wanting to disrupt the industry, and I think in some ways we have. In some ways we've got a long, long way to go. Values, the only two that I really talk about, I'll talk about excellence and kindness, and that's sort of fairly well documented. Excellence, the bar is high, right? It's always high, and we've already talked about discipline, but you want to be acknowledged for being good at something. If you're here, let's be acknowledged for being good at this, right? It's not for everyone as an industry. It can be quite a peripatetic industry in terms of people's career spans. But if you're going to do something, let's do it well, right? Do it together. And then the kindness bit, for me, that you'll never hear me shout at anyone. Ben's worked with me. I won't. People are frustrating, right? But we'll try and speak in a fair way to them, even, and try to tackle some of the issues in a compassionate way. It doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. We have lots of difficult conversations, typically around performance behaviours. But the base case is that we'll try and do that in the right way. That's been our approach to the business so far.
There's something that I share with all of the companies that we work with. We get invited in to kind of develop their leaders, and the kindness bit that resonated with me at Dartmouth was, I hope I haven't made this up and you actually did say this, because otherwise it's going to burst a bubble for me. But I think I can remember in one of our town halls, or even before we did town halls, when we did an end of week wrap up, I think I remember on a number of occasions you saying that kind of the reason why kindness is so important is from a moral perspective. That's easy. You should want to be kind and help out your fellow human, but also from a commercial perspective, all things being equal, and I hope this is verbatim, all things being equal, people will want to do business with people that are the kindest people and the people that they like. And that's really stuck with me in our business. So either I made that up or you did say it. I'll have to find out now.
Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
No, it's actually true. No, it's true. Right. Look, there's a commercial angle to it as well. Right. I think that, it's not, I don't think it's fluffy. There's commerciality to it in terms of both the sales aspect, in terms of people liking you and wanting to do business with you. But then the flip side is people wanting to work with you. And again, it doesn't mean we don't have awkward conversations. We've exited or lost people that don't fit into our way of doing things, either through misaligned values or behaviours or ambitions, right? And I'm generally okay with that. We won't get it right every time. Sometimes you've got to stop and reflect and work out, is it me or is it them? You can't always just say it's them. But broadly, some of the most of the big calls I think we get right, if I'm honest, because it's fairly easy to work out. I like people who are sort of humble achievers, and it's like Ben knows most of my leadership. I think they tick those boxes in abundance, right? We're not chest beaters in an industry that's full of them. They're hardworking, they're humble, they're diligent, and they are smart, and that resonates hopefully through the business. This is not always about who's billing the most, and that's one of the metrics for our industry is clearly kind of sales generation. But yeah, I think that the kindness bit's got a very strong commercial edge to it.
I like the terminology you used. They said that the people that work with you, you didn't say for you, which is quite refreshing to hear. In terms of that team element, what do you think is the glue that binds your team together? If you're going to put something out there that people could take away, what would you say is the glue for your team at the moment?
I think we've got a very strong sense of common purpose around the MD group. Around, we've got an opportunity to take what we've done and turn this into a global force. I think there've been, we're in stage 3 of the journey. The first part of the journey was just getting up and running, surviving. We got first private equity round after 6 years. That was a kind of first rubber stamping externally of, okay, if you're doing something well and you built a business of value and worth investing in. The second thing was taking that concept and starting to scale it and let it mature. That's taken us on the next 4 years to where we are today. And I think the third stage is extrapolating that out. We've got a classroom to boardroom model, which I've not spoken about, but taking early stage talent and tracking them all the way through their careers. But there's significant opportunity to keep growing that, keep going up the food chain, internationalizing the business. And we leave an awful lot of work on the table with either competitors or stuff that doesn't come our way. And it's a massive industry, right? It's a multi-billion pound spend every year on recruitment, and we're 55 million of it. So there's an awful lot of growth still to come, and I think that's the journey for the next 4 or 5 years. But put simply, if I look, you've asked them, I think that they find it, it's an interest. People are interesting. They're frustrating, but they're interesting. And you've asked, the first 30 minutes, how do we approach it? How do we set the vision, the ambition, the goals? It's constantly moving because you're trying to set the agenda and not have that set by the outside culture or the world or short-termism. There's so many things that can in fact pollute what you're trying to do and distract you, and we're trying to keep the purity of purpose. If we keep doing the right thing over and over and over again, it will pay dividends, but you've got to stay on that track.
It was really timely. I was asked yesterday by a client, how do you effectively communicate your sense of purpose or your vision and purpose? How do you communicate that out through the business so it doesn't get distorted or diluted? So that'd be my question to you now that you've mentioned it. How do you effectively communicate your vision and that one goal, one purpose effectively down through the business?
Yeah, I think there are 2 or 3 ways, right? One is top down, right, in terms of the message I give from, as Ben said, quarterlies, town halls, etc. 2 is what ripples through your next group of people that help lead the business, and how do you help them steer the company or their teams? So breaking that down into kind of leadership through others, and then I think 3, probably some of the kind of building blocks that you try to institutionalize. So things like onboarding, constant reiterating of the message. This is what good looks like. This is how we behave. I've used this analogy a few times, I think, but when your kids go to school, day one, they have no idea what's going on. And my eldest started a new school in September, and he found it really frustrating, having really known his way around his junior school, to suddenly everything was bewildering. He's the smallest kid in a bigger school, but after 1 or 2 weeks, he's locked into, okay, the bell goes, I'm due here on a Monday, it goes again, I pick up my books, I go here. You follow a pattern pretty quickly, and you want to try and institutionalize some of those processes so that people fall into lockstep with your walking rhythm versus just having 300 people marching to their own beat. If you cast your mind, I don't know if you've seen it, but you cast right to Dead Poets Society. Robin Williams has them marching around that courtyard, and you have one, I think it's called New Wonder, but it's kind of opting out, but the rest will start falling into a rhythm of marching together. And there's also safety, right, in that as well. Not being part of a tribe and being part of a team. There's a safety and a comfort to that, but it's powerful, right? Most people would rather be part of a team than islands in life. Like we all basically look for our tribe.
Yeah, I think I completely resonate with that. I think tribalism is massive in terms of like group dynamics, turning groups into teams. And there was I can't remember, it was like an all or nothing, like Amazon all or nothing. They follow a sports team, etc. There was one that was ages and ages ago. I think it was back in the day where they were just doing like NFL teams, and their onboarding process within the team was actually, it wasn't the captain or the coach that did the onboarding and welcomes the new player and showed them like how to train, ways of working, etc. It was the last player in, and that peer-to-peer kind of transfer of the tribal ways that echoes back kind of back generations. And I think that's a really interesting part you say about creating processes around onboarding and tribalism and that glue that the Ben questioned you about, like binds people together. So I think that's a really interesting bit.
And there are rituals, right? I know you're a big fan of this as well, but the All Blacks book Legacy, is so powerful around this is the way that we do things. We win a World Cup, we celebrate it for 24 hours, and then we reset. It starts again, right? You've got 24 hours. You lose in a semi-final, you mourn for 24 hours, you reset, we go again. We obviously big fans of things like sweeping the sheds and leaders eating last and stuff like that. But that is just a part of the ritualism of how we go about building the teams and what people are expected to fall into, right? And I'm a big fan of we're stewards for the next generation, and that's the way I think about the business, right? I think one of the failings of businesses quite often, which I suspect family-owned businesses don't have as much, but you are trying to build a business forever, not for the short term. And so you want short-term success, you want to take it as far as you can, but let's make sure that when our time is up, we pass it on in better shape. And my view, is that over the next 5-10 years, however long I've got left of the business, I want to hand the keys over to the next person, and it's in better shape than where I took it on, and they kick it on. I've done my job brilliantly, right? The last thing I want is for it to go backwards. I actually think that's sometimes people have that ego around it, can't survive without me, but you haven't done your job properly in terms of building leadership.
Yeah, and I think I've had obviously the inside track and kind of seeing Dartmouth relatively early, and then following what's happened since I left the business, and I think it's really clear to me that was started. Like, you were very conscious about creating that culture, that tribalism, and those ways of working and expectations and behaviors from day one. I think a lot of the people that listen to the podcast now will be like trying to take some golden nuggets away. I think if you try and kind of implant that into a much bigger organization after it's grown, I think that's a lot harder. And I think one of the key kind of wins I can see from how you've built the group and Dartmouth is having those ethoses from day one, and they've echoed through. And so I think you've been able to kind of have that organically spread through the business, rather than go, oh, okay, now we need some ways of working and some values and a cause. I think I can see that cause has run through. My next question for you, Logan, is about probably like your maybe your biggest challenge now, which is like followership. So it's not about like how do you help people follow you, but actually you said yourself earlier on, you like the backstop now. So how have you gone about the transition from like leading from the front, being the hardest work in the room, to now, as you said, you've got a group of managing directors who you're leading through leaders. So how have you gone through that journey of now following their decisions or their understanding of how to achieve the objective?
Look, by hook or by crook, we are super privileged to have a group of MDs who I think are, I've said this already, but humble, interested, interesting. I think our management team just gets better and better over the years. We're finding a better rhythm of how to work together, how to challenge each other without all falling out and walking out and room in a sour way. I think we bear with one another and our foibles really well. I include myself in that, right? I've got my own quirks. And so, sort of check and challenge along the way is good, healthy debate. It doesn't always work like this, but we try to encourage this. Like, you leave it in the room, right? Don't go and have the stairwell conversations afterwards and the side conversations. And we are all aligned, right, in terms of growing the company and trying to get to the next peak, whatever that is, whatever the next marker is. We're pretty super aligned on that. And I think that the one thing that we've definitely learned along the way, and I've learned along the way, right? There's not one way to do it. There's not always just one single right way. So not everyone's right all the time. Let's have the debate and then again find a decision and move on. And I actually think People don't see this in me. I actually think I'm surprisingly laid back on quite a lot of things. I have some very clear red lines on certain things which people probably know not to cross. But I'm generally I don't tend to sweat a lot of the small stuff. And actually, that's probably where the MDs are better than me, because they're probably a bit more into detail on quite a lot of things.
I've got a question there, but if you can just bear in mind what you thought of when you said what was your next peak, because we've got a really personal question to come up and to follow with that. So if you can just think about what flashed into your mind when you thought about your next peak, that'd be great. But in terms of those MDs and nurturing that high performance within that team in quite a quick way, what do you think is the key for that? Like most people say sort of vulnerability or empathy, or how do you ensure high performance in a team over a very short time period? What's the key to that? Because that's going to be something that a lot of listeners will want to take away and emulate within their businesses.
Look, everyone's set really, really clear goals in our business. Short term, long, medium term. We've got a long-term goal. Right? We've got very clear markers. We're fortunate in our industry. The scorecard is revenue and profit, and we clearly look at that. But we've got softer things. So things like our NPS score, staff culture amp is what we use for internal reporting. So we definitely look at the data and keep the data, but the kind of on a monthly basis, are we going forwards or backwards based on work won, work executed, are people's careers going forwards? This is an interesting year, because for the last 2.5 years we've had an economy that, because it was shut down, right, we're playing catch up, and everyone has had a good 2 years. I think there are not that many businesses, maybe outside of hospitality, that have not grown in the last couple of years. This is the first year where everyone's having to suddenly take stock and say, well, it's not as easy as we thought it was. I'm sure you guys have those conversations, right? Growth came so easily. Pile heads in, we're winning. Suddenly everyone's like, whoa, might have not cracked this. And for people who are sort of sitting around my age, you kind of like, we kind of knew it was come, right? There's no end to boom or bust. We move in cycles. It's a good reset year for that. And it's harder, right? It's much easier when it's winning and everyone has that sense of winning. But I also think that sometimes you're dealing with a runaway train, and the details get missed because of it. And so I think there's a good chance for everyone to kind of retake stock, and are we doing the basics really, really well?
No, see, it comes back to that consistency you mentioned earlier, doing the basics, doing them well, even when no one's looking, just like the parenting that we've all mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Do it consistently. I like that, and those standards in place.
Which brings us on to our West Peak question. So West Peak, like the name is based on kind of skill acquisition and people understanding that, you learn a little bit of something and you think that's the peak, but actually that's your false summit. And then you realize, oh my goodness, like I know nothing. So what if you reflect back, what is one of your like seminal West Peak moments where you've been like, oh, there's loads more to learn here?
Or is it still to come? Is it something that you've seen in the future and actually you're still getting there? You haven't reached the pinnacle.
Clearly haven't, right? We talk about, otherwise we'd pack up and go home. All right. So I think there have been 4 markers along the way, right? Getting the business to 30 people, or starting the business, getting to 30 people, getting to 50 people, getting to 100, and then getting it to 300. And the next step is getting to 500, and we'll have a third brand in the group come October time. All of it brings new growth pains and new challenges, right? So we spent a lot of time talking about dissemination of culture and values and goals. They're different pain points because your processes and systems get stretched, and it's always like you cut your cloth to fit a 100-person business. You then go and you stretch that cloth to as you get to 200, and actually what you need to do is take it off and recut it, and that's one of the challenges is you grow. Obvious truism, you don't know what you don't know, right? But you're constantly walking as you go into you're in growth mode, new territory. It's actually easier when you're on the back foot. When we went into the pandemic, I hadn't had a pandemic in my lifetime before, but I'd had a recession. It's like, look, I know the playbook here, right? I know the playbook because I've worked through two recessions before. It's preserve cash, hunker down, get everyone in survival mode, right, straight away. And the whole start of the pandemic the whole pandemic was completely different, and hopefully a once in a lifetime thing for us. But we've all seen what recessions can do to businesses, and so to answer your question, what's the next peak? The next peak for me as we get bigger is taking what's worked and evolving it and adapting it. It can't always work. Where give me a good example in the early days, 10 direct reports up to me, it's all man management, right? It's hearts and mind man management. I think that's why a lot of these businesses don't scale in our industry, because it works. It's actually quite fun, right? I mean, everyone kind of feed off your energy and kind of be semi-dependent on you, but that dependency culture long term is terrible for other people's careers. Might be really good for your ego and your sense of your own personal sense of worth, but it's actually not good for their careers. And I'm trying to constantly deconstruct this sense of dependency. And I know you guys spend a lot of time on that. It's like we're trying to make you self-standing so that when you get to your summit and realize it's a false summit, you're not sitting there going, oh, what do I do? You're like, okay, I knew this was coming. I know exactly what I need to do. And for me, there's always another peak, right? My view is that there's always a bigger fish out there. So we have a state today. We're trying to be number one or number two in every market we operate in. As far as I'm concerned, we're always number two, right? There's always something. There's always someone to go after, or someone bigger, or someone better, and therefore it's more fun chasing than being chased, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily want to achieve your summit. You always want to be on the back foot, stretching yourself, always trying to achieve more.
Well, yeah, but they're different summits, right? So there are different peaks along the way, and so my view is that we're here. We've got 3 or 4 more to climb. That every 3 to 5 year cycle, you kind of reset another big goal. Our first goal was build a £20 million company. We did that, then it was a £100 million company. That felt like a big number at the time, and I got kind of semi-bullied by one of our MDs to say that openly. I said it openly, and then I bought myself more time. That'll take us 10 years. We did it in 4, right? I'm now saying, pretty openly, let's try and create a £300 million company, right? Might take us 10 years, might do it in 5. We're hoping to do it in 5.
Exciting. There's a bit there that I just want to kind of reverse back to, because it was really, really important. I think there's that elixir of like the dopamine hit you get from hero mode, which you were talking about, which is like having that, everyone needs me as a leader, everyone needs me, etc. And I think that's a really important, a really important tripwire for all leaders, whether you're leading a team of 5, 3, 1 person, or you're leading a 300-person business. Like that dopamine hit that we all crave when we go in to save the day, as you said, kind of does your people a disservice and actually gets you down into the weeds, being less effective, which is exactly what you shared at the very beginning. Like, you need to be the hardest worker in the room, but you need to be working on the highest value tasks. And I think those are some really important lessons that I can certainly take away, and I think people can take away from our conversation. Logan, it's been an absolute pleasure, like chatting to you again, and learning kind of your journey, your approach to how you lead. So thank you very much for coming on the How They Lead podcast.
Not at all. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the How They Lead podcast.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode and learned something new about the world of high performance.
If you have any feedback or suggestions for future episodes, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
And don't forget to subscribe to the How They Lead podcast on your favourite platform so you never miss an episode.
Until next time, keep pushing yourself to reach your full potential and evolve the way you perform.
And remember, just because something has always been done a certain way doesn't mean doing it a new way can't work.